Looking deluxe today.
Oh, quite deluxe, huh?
What do we have here on the table, JJ?
Well, we've got our brand new X99 Deluxe Motherboard. It's really actually an amazing board. I've been really happy with this. We've been working on this board for a really long period of time, and right off the bat, I think you can see that it's got an entirely different look and feel to it. Not just because it's a big looking board in terms of it being X99, but that it's got an entirely new ID. It's a new aesthetic. It's white, which this has been something that we've been playing around with for a while. And we've been really excited now to introduce this actually on the mainstream series. So while we're focusing right now on the Deluxe, this actually will be a color aesthetic that you're going to see on the Pro as well as also on the entry-level Dash A. And I think it really complements an awesome set of the newer chassis that are out there on the market, as well as components that have white, but it equally fits well in any black chassis. So you can easily go ahead and roll it in just about any chassis that's out there. But if you go ahead and you create kind of a white thematic build, I think it's going to look awesome.
Some of these lines are like reminding me of like a sports car or something.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you kind of compare it to some of the previous generation designs, it's got a bit more, I think, of kind of soft kind of corners to it, but it's got a little bit of somewhat aggressive styling to it, but it's a balance. I think it feels fresh, modern, and clean, but you're definitely right. There's kind of some I'd say formula kind of inspired lines there in terms of it's like
okay, we got soft here and then aggressive here and here.
And it's a really nice contrast though between, I think, the matte black PCB and then of course the white accenting that occurs, and then of course the heat sinks that go on top of the primary portions of the heatsink assembly, whether it's going to be on the VRM here or on the PCH section. And we actually even have some slight accent lighting. There's actually, of course, an accent lighting that goes on the isolated sound section that will light up, and it's got a nice little white light LED there to it, so that gives it a little bit of a halo effect. And as we go into the board and we talk about the features and the functionality, but quickly to touch on, there's actually even 3 LEDs that we'll talk about. There's a reason why they're on there, but you can also turn them on and they're physically on the motherboard. So but we'll get to that point, I guess, in a little bit.
When we get down to the functionality, there's also a ton of accessories here too, so I guess we can get to those after the functionality. But
yeah, so first and foremost, of course, it's an X99 based motherboard, so of course it's going to fully support any one of the 3 parts. So whether you're looking at the 2K parts or the X series part, this board's going to get you taken care of in terms of compatibility. And of course, like always, we go really serious on the power delivery. This is actually a completely revised power topology and design implementation that's been built from the ground up specifically for X99. This is an extremely high current based platform, so we really carefully analyze the power requirement needs and what we want to do in terms of the power topology and layout. I won't go into it, but there's been some specialized design implementations also on here, which really allow us to maximize the overclocking capability specifically for the cache ratio as well as for the DRAM, ensuring not only significantly higher frequencies than what we're going to see with competitors' boards, but also in helping to maintain overall better stability. And that kind of goes hand in hand with historically what we've talked about with special kind of DRAM and topology and trace tuning layout.
Right.
That's all in there. But the inductors that we've got on that board, if you take a look at them, they're kind of a little bit similar to some of the previous generations where you see they've even got finning characteristics in there, so you get superior thermal dissipation characteristics. They're extremely high in terms of their amperage output capabilities, and then when tied in with the MOSFET and driver assembly right there, you've got more than enough power to be able to ensure massive overclocking capability, but awesome efficiency if you're looking to run the board even at stock parameters. Although with all the K parts, hopefully you're at least going for some,
a little bit,
a bit of an overclocking, so at least 3.8 to 4 gigahertz. You got 10K rated capacitors that are all throughout the board, so you're good to go there. One of the hallmarks on the Deluxe is you've always got bigger heatsink assembly designs too, so you got this massive VRM heatsink that goes over the primary VRM components with the heat pipe, then extends into the entire actually I/O block over here. So in terms of the back plane, it goes in, and so in this entire back section, you guys can't see it, but directly underneath there's a whole nother actual heatsink. So then that will work, of course, with the exhaust that's provided to you in your chassis once you go ahead and set it up. So that helps to really ensure this entire section is extremely cooled. And that's really important because when you start to push this platform, you could easily be talking about 200, 225, maybe even 250 watts of thermal dissipation that's going to be needed for the CPU and for the VRM, especially if you're putting under high level loads. And with this platform really being trended towards people that are looking advanced productivity, high-end gaming, content creation, where you're hammering the platform,
right.
Thermals are an important design consideration.
That's getting into some like AMD territory right there with that kind of power.
It is definitely a lot of power requirement there. So of course, board still features what you would expect in terms of quad channel memory design. It's got the QDIMM design, which makes it really easy in terms of only a single latch required to be able to lock it in place. Now if we were to take a look at the board as a whole, you know, we're always really big on fan connectors. We've got them logically laid out. So of course you got the two over here, then you've got another fan header here, another fan header here, and then two here. So it's really well laid out in terms of mapping everything. This is just like Z97, so we've got a massive amount of fan granularity and control. Every single header is a 4-pin. They all support DC and PWM control, so that means 3-pin or 4-pin fans. Doesn't matter. You can tune them, tweak them, control them in the UEFI or in the operating system. Get the full fan calibration, and then also, even I think more importantly, is that you also have the temperature input mapping. So instead of just like this chassis header here or this chassis header here, always being linked into the CPU, we can link it into different portions. So you can link it into the VRM, you can link it into the motherboard temperature, you can link it into the PCH temperature. So you got the flexibility for every single one of those headers. You can go ahead and map them to a different temperature input source. But for this generation and X99, we want to push the envelope even further. So I think the fan controls already right here are obscene. They're absolute best of what you could do. And even though you only have 6, if you use a PWM splitter cable, right, you could plug this on any header and then you could go ahead and multiplex out, right?
Right.
But we wanted to add even more granularity and control. So what we did is we developed this little new guy right here, which is a little pretty awesome little fan hub extension module system. So the Super I/O controller, which is a chip that's on the motherboard, traditionally can only give you 6 fan headers. But what we've gone ahead and done is there's another Super I/O controller built onto this, and then we have a special link layer mechanism that will communicate with the Super I/O controller on the motherboard, and then this will actually give you an additional full 3 fan headers. And the great thing about this is that they're fully transparent. So even if you're in the UEFI or in the operating system, it's not like it's a secondary like set with different fan controls. It looks like just another 3 fan headers that you have available to you.
But then you have 2 Super I/O controllers going on.
Right, but we've made all that logic work. You don't have to worry about that as a user. And the great thing about it is you still get all the same exact controls. So you're going to get 3-pin and 4-pin control. You get the full fan calibration functionality on these headers as well. And then on top of that, if you guys can see right there, you've got 1, 2, 3. You have 3 more temperature input sources. So the Deluxe, if we go back here down to the bottom portion of the Deluxe, it has another temperature input source header. So there's 4 additional temperature input sources. So you could go ahead and run one to, let's say, on top of your SSD, another one to the chassis, another one to the back of the graphics card, and you could have those fans respond to that. And the great thing is this will talk to the motherboard. So those temperature input sources are also available to any header that's on the motherboard.
Does it come with the temp sensors?
It comes with one included in. If you want to add more, then of course you can purchase them. They're pretty cheap online. You can get a thermosistor, a thermocoupler. It's usually about like $2 or $3, so it's pretty inexpensive.
Yeah.
But this is pretty insane. So natively, if you think that the board by default has 6, now you've moved over to 9 fan headers. And of course, if you were to start using the PWM output characteristic and start doing the PWM splitter cable, it gets even crazier. So I think this is really awesome for guys that want to have the most level of cooling and flexibility for how they set up their system. Plus, one of the nice things is it gives you more cable routing flexibility, because what you can do is the included cable is actually fairly long. You can mount this in a different place, and let's say you didn't want to run that cable specifically to the motherboard, you can just go ahead and run it to this little guy right there. So that's pretty awesome. Now, when we take a look here in the kind of the lower section of the board, you're going to see there's tons of connectivity. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 SATA ports on the motherboard.
Let me see if we can turn this around so I can see it.
So 12 SATA ports, tons of connectivity for you guys that are looking to have high-speed storage, whether it's going to be SSDs as well as SATA Express. Of course, down here at the bottom, those 4 SATA 6G ports are equally serving as 2 sets of SATA Express connectivity, so for 2 SATA Express-based SSDs for when they become available. Now, in addition to that, though, the board actually right here, you can see offers M.2. Now, one of the things that's awesome about the Deluxe is it's an ATX-based specification form factor. It's not an ultra-large board, so it's going to be extremely flexible at being able to integrate into just about any chassis, which is pretty cool. And if you need to go ahead and install M.2, you can go ahead and install it in there. There's a little bracket that comes with the board, so you can just go ahead and pop it in there.
And just stands right there.
And stands right there, and you're good to go. And one of the nice things about that is, especially with this platform being really more geared towards users that want a huge amount of PCIe expansion, especially for multiple GPUs, you can see we're not impacting any of the PCIe slots at terms of either having to be able to install it or affecting your ability to add in those GPUs to block that. So it was a really complex design to actually get all that to work and be laid out to give you that flexibility, giving you SATA Express, SATA, M.2, and really not compromising on the PCIe slot layout design.
Yeah, it always made me scratch my head when I looked at M.2, because the connector is on on one extremity, right, and then all the rest of it just lays on top of the PCB, and it's like, well, there's a bunch of space right here I could be using. I mean, of course you could, there's trace routes and there's all little components that can go under there, but
it makes it really tricky, but we think that this is a really well kind of balanced design. So if we take a look here and we kind of rotate the board back over and we take a look at some of the other connectivity you've got, there's tons going down here at the bottom. You're going to have support right here via the Thunderbolt EX module. So if you guys want to be able to enable Thunderbolt support, that's big because you didn't have that on X99, and now you're going to have that ability to do that on X99.
That module does not come in the box.
Correct. It doesn't come in the box. Doesn't come in the box. It's an optional accessory. Down here at the bottom, you got everything you'd ask. You got 2 front USB 2 ports. You got dual front USB 3, so that's awesome. If you want to have front for the newer chassis that maybe have 4, or maybe a USB 3 card reader, and then front USB 3 ports. You move over, you got the debug LED, power reset, and of course you got the full crystal sound isolated sound design. So that's just like Z97. If you guys want, make sure to check that video out where we do even some actual demos and we show you the way it works. But you got the Nichicon audio grade caps, you got an operational amplifier built on there with the full isolated sound design, and you got that optimization for headphones, in-ear monitors, or desktop speakers, whether you plug into the actual front headphone or even the line out. When you take a look at the PCIe slot expansion, tons. Boards optimized really for 2-way and 3-way base configurations. One cool feature is if you go here, you can see there's a lot of switches, right? This switch will actually illuminate LEDs that we have set up on the board. Most of you guys, I'd love for you guys to read the manual, but most people don't. So one cool thing is you do, if you go ahead and switch this, and let's say 2-way, 2 LEDs will light up telling you exactly which are the right 2 slots to use for 2-way configurations. If you switch it over to another slot, then it'll tell you which ones are the right ones for 3. Even if you don't use 2 or 3 GPUs and you only use a single GPU, it's cool because they're white LEDs and they look actually pretty cool. So you can still go ahead and turn it on. It's
just adding LEDs.
Yeah, it's just a physical kind of layout.
All right.
To allow you to kind of know what to use. But if you guys want to add that aesthetic, then you can go ahead and just flip it on. You got, of course, the one-touch overclocking with the TPU switches, and then from there we got the easy XMP switch, so you can easily enable that. And then you've even got the EPU switch, will allow you to keep stock performance but reduce power consumption and voltage by doing an undervolt. So you throw that into there. If you look at here, the back I/O board is pretty much packed to the gills. We've got a lot going on right here. You can see we've got USB BIOS flashback, so you can flash, and update the UEFI. No CPU, no memory, no graphics card, just the power plugged in. You got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's 10 USB 3 ports on the back of the board. I was talking to you though. One thing that's unique kind of on the Deluxe is we still maintain a discrete AS Media 1042A controller on there, and we do that to be able to ensure dedicated bandwidth, as well as also being able to ensure better interoperability and compatibility with some USB 3 devices. So you have both the Intel native USB 3 and you have the Intel add-in AS Media. You got 2 Intel Gigabit Ethernet ports, one from native chipset and the other one that's from an add-in PCIe. 2 USB 2 ports for legacy connectivity. Here you can see part of that larger heatsink assembly that I was talking about. And then right there, bam, world's first board with 802.11 AC 3x3. So if you guys are rocking the absolute highest class of routers, like AC66, AC68, AC87, something like that, this is a perfect option. Plus it's got beamforming and turbo clamp. It's an absolute beast. And you still get the Bluetooth. Plus you've got the multi-channel audio enabled by the Realtek AOC 1150, and you got the DTS codec package still here, so if you want to be able to output optically to a receiver or something like that, you're good to go. And for you guys that are out there that are gamers or want to be able to prioritize the network, we still also keep the TurboLAN software, which will allow you to actually accelerate any connection, whether it's going to be the NIC or whether it's the Wi-Fi. You're not limited to a physical port if maybe you're using something like a killer NIC solution and you couldn't optimize, let's say, the Wi-Fi. And we still keep USB 3 boost to improve storage performance, and USB charger plus, so guys that want to be able to quick charge their tablets or smartphones, you're good to go, man. So it's pretty much, it's packed to the gills. I mean, you couldn't pretty much, I think, ask for more in terms of a spec on the board. It's just got about just every single spec, and Lastly, you got a couple of crazy little accessories. You got this little M.2 Hyper Express add-in card. This actually does come inside there.
Says in the box.
So if you didn't want to use that and you wanted to just plug it into a slot, you could do that. If you wanted to go crazy and you wanted to do 2 M.2s and do like a software RAID, then you could go that route. You could use that.
And that's like the only way you could, I mean, I don't know of any other way to do a RAID with M.2.
It's exactly. As of right now, you can't actually have a hardware-based M.2 RAID and have it be bootable. So even with that, it would have to be done through software RAID. And this is the antenna it comes included in. Still's got the nice little magnetic base, so you can quickly put it on your chassis if your chassis is made out of metal. And we still support the optional modules like the NFC little express breakout box, which we did some content in the past. You guys can check that out. But all the way around, you know, the board's pretty much packed to the gills, and we're going to be doing a video to talk and show about the auto overclocking technology, because as always, you know, we come to the table with our 5-way optimization suite, which will dynamically auto overclock the CPU specific to your CPU, your memory, your cooling solution, your power supply. We've got the Fan Expert 3 suite in there, you know, and tons more within the AI suite and AI suite in the 5-way optimization package. And Turbo app, if you remember from Turbo app, where we have the ability to profile clock speeds to specific programs, we've made even further enhancements. You can now do like fan profiling. So if you want to set like a specific program to specific fan profile, you can do that. So if you're browsing the internet, you're in, let's say in Chrome or you're in IE, all the fans can go to silent.
So let's chill out.
Yeah, and the moment you go into Premiere, they could all go to standard. And the moment that you jump into Battlefield, then they would also go into whatever fan profiling you want. And there's tons and tons more that we've integrated there. So software suite-wise, the board is pretty much just packed to the gills.
Well, it's time for you guys to watch all the other videos. This is the Deluxe. It's got like almost like the best bits of everything crammed into one board. But there's also some specialized options like the ROG.
Yes.
And you guys can click on the screen to watch that video. And then there's also the workstation board, which might be the board I'm looking at.
Yeah, they're all awesome. I mean, all of them are going to ultimately be able to do productivity, gaming, or content creation. But if you're looking for the board that kind of pretty much can do all of it, and it's got a complement to really kind of align with all that, the Deluxe and the Mainstream series is going to be a really great choice.
And there's also going to be the video on, just like I said, all the special features and exclusive software and that sort of thing. So click on the screen to watch all the rest of the X99 videos. We'll see you in the next video. All right, JJ.
Subtle intro. Subtle.
That's pretty not subtle.
Totally not subtle.